if we can figure out a way to turn something on to regenerate something, but we also have to be careful to make sure we turn it back off.
That's right. That's right. Because just for you ladies, you go out and you buy some skin cream, and it has growth factors in there, and of course, well, growth factors must be good. I'm getting old. My skin needs. But in oncology, a doctor who's trying to fight an aggressive cancer in someone's body, he's fighting an upregulation, out of control upregulation of those same growth factors that they put in your skin cream. So the stuff is not. It's dangerous. Your immune system. Another thing Kevin Anderson said. The reason your immune system can defeat every disease is because it's so powerful that if it brought all of its guns, not only could it defeat the disease, but it would kill you.
Greetings to the brightest audience in the country. Welcome to Real Science Radio. I'm Fred Williams.
And I'm Doug McBurney, Bible student, science geek, amateur comedian. Fred, it is great to be back with you in studio talking about real science on Friday.
So, Doug, do humans have a latent ability to regenerate body parts?
Whoa, Fred, that actually reminds me of an interview I heard on Real Science Radio. It's got to be close to 10 years ago now. Kevin Anderson was interviewed by Bob Enyart.
Yep.
And Kevin said words to the effect of, the human immune system cannot be defeated. It can defeat every disease. It can heal every injury short of regenerating a limb, and it maybe can even do that. And I remember thinking, wow, they were talking about immunotherapy, targeted antibody therapy, and the robust nature of the human immune system. And so we've got this article from Natural News.
And just to really quickly say, that was the late, great Dr.
Kevin Anderson.
He was the head of the Creation Research Society, a friend of mine, and he unfortunately passed with COVID.
Yeah.
He's in eternity with God now, with Jesus.
Got all the answers now.
He's got all the answers.
Yep.
But he was always one of my favorite in the creation movement, because I loved microbiology and information theory and how it all plays into genetics. And his talks were always fantastic.
Well, I tell you what, I was on a plane listening to that interview, and my plane was landing. I was going to a trade show and a medical convention where companies that I work for, we try to sell their stuff, and some of them have to do with regenerative medicine, wound healing, just ancillary stuff like that. And I remember landing thinking, I have such an advantage on all these other sales reps. They have no clue about any of this stuff.
Yeah.
All they know is what the sales manager told them about this cytokine or this growth factor. I just listened to an interview with one of the greatest minds in science who knows the living God, who's talking about what this is really all about. And I can remember in the booth on so many occasions, Fred, remembering Bob and Kevin and the words that they gave me that helped me when I had to tell a PhD or an MD, I had to convince him that my product worked, and I barely graduated from high school. I had the armamentarium from Real Science Radio that I could get the PhD to pull out his wallet and his credit card and buy the product. That's because I could explain the immunotherapy research and the science behind. And it's just
medical doctors are by and large they're against evolution. I know most of these guys are at least intelligent design. A lot of people don't realize that. They're like, all scientists believe in evolution. That's nonsense. But that's cool to have that upper edge.
It's always been a great advantage, and most doctors and professors and PhD researchers, when you talk to them in real time about real biology, evolution never comes up. It's never a part of the discussion, and the whole discussion is about design. And it's about engineering and how can we make this do this, and it's never, well, maybe we can just wait. No, that's not what it's about. And so we have this latest research, and this is published out at the University of Washington. This is a paper, well, the article I pulled down from Natural News.
And this is November 12th.
Yeah, this is from November 12th. and they're citing a study that University of Washington Hand Center orthopedic surgeon Dr. Christopher Allen was a part of a study on the power of the immune system to possibly regenerate limbs. And so this reminds me of a video that Sal Cordova turned us on to, an interview with Dr. Robert Metheny.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Is it Robert Metheny? Robert Metheny, who is doing research to regenerate cardiac tissue, which it's always been thought that, brain tissue and heart tissue, once it dies,
it's done. There's no regenerating.
It never regenerates. And Dr. Metheny seems to have found a key to unlock a switch, a genetic switch that allows cardiac tissue to basically experience life as an embryo. And
let's visit that. So do something that the embryo does. You mentioned this to me off air. So can you explain that? Let's start from the beginning. So when we're forming in the womb, there's genetic information that's growing stuff. So we regenerate from the beginning, and then things turn off right after something is grown, like an ear, all our limbs, everything.
Yes, yes. And this is one of the great discussions that I love to have in my professional life. When you start talking about regenerative medicine with a bunch of unbelievers, it's really great to say, you know what? At one point, you were one cell in your mother's belly, one cell. And that one cell eventually grew nerves and muscles and skin and blood vessels, and then fingers and toes and arms and legs and a heart and lungs and a brain. So at one point, the information was in that one cell to grow all of this. And so
there's a switch that turns it off, right? Or else I'd have really long fingers.
That's right. Once you have all the fingers you need, then the generative information and capacity somehow turns a switch and says, that's enough fingers, that's enough hearts, that's enough lungs, 2 eyes, we'll stop at 2. So that's how you develop into a physical being. And so based on the research Dr. Metheny talked about, and we'll link to his video, which is just mind-blowing, the information to regenerate body parts and limbs is in our DNA. It is. There's no doubt about it because we did it once.
Yes.
And so it's just a matter of, can we figure out how to turn it on and turn it off safely? And I think given enough time and opportunity, if we can keep civilization from falling into the hands of the madmen, and we can still do science and we can still honor God, I don't see why we would not be able to figure that out.
Yeah, so if we can figure out a way to turn something on to regenerate something, but we also have to be careful to make sure we turn it back off.
That's right. That's right. Because just for you ladies, you go out and you buy some skin cream, and it has growth factors in there, and of course, growth factors must be good. I'm getting old. My skin needs. But in oncology, a doctor who's trying to fight an aggressive cancer in someone's body, he's fighting an upregulation, out of control upregulation of those same growth factors that they put in your skin cream. So the stuff is not, it's dangerous. Your immune system, another thing Kevin Anderson said, the reason your immune system can defeat every disease is because it's so powerful that if it brought all of its guns, not only could it defeat the disease, but it would kill you. So your immune system actually has to stop itself. It puts brakes on itself.
And if it doesn't, then isn't that what an autoimmune disease is?
An autoimmune disease and cancer.
And it overreacts. I know my wife, when she had surgery on her hand, she had this not uncommon condition. I know John Elway had it, where your hand gets some muscles in it where your hand starts to do this over time. And so the surgery goes in and corrects that. And then normally you can use it for a long time. Well, she had this autoimmune response where her body's like, I don't like that surgery, and attacked it. So she took over a year of physical therapy to get her hand, and she'll never have the complete, ideal use. And the worst ramification of this whole thing, Doug, is I have to do the dishes now.
Oh, Man, that is tragic,
It's
Fred.
very tragic, you know?
That is an overreaction of the immune system produces scar-like tissue where it should produce normal tissue. And what's interesting, since we're talking about the immune system, you know that when we cut ourselves as adults, we injure our body, we form a scar because it's an imperfect, incorrect. It's your body is your body first programmed to stop the bleeding, because if your body doesn't stop the bleeding, nothing else matters, right? So the bleeding stops first, and then there's the healing process. Depending on how healthy you are, and the environment of the healing will affect the quality of the repair. Mm-hmm. Well, in utero, doctors can perform surgery on fetuses with spina bifida, which is an open cavity where the bottom of the spinal cord doesn't close. And these doctors will perform a full-on surgical procedure. They'll remove tissue, they'll suture, they'll graft. There's everything associated with surgery happens to these fetuses in the womb. And many of them are born with no scar and no evidence that they had surgery at all. Because in that perfect environment and that super mega robust immune response, which, by the way, in the fetus, there are no inflammatory cytokines. You just mentioned that Kevin Anderson died with COVID. And COVID, most of the people who died with COVID died because of what they called the cytokine storm. It was this massive upregulation of inflammatory cytokines in response to this new viral infection that your body doesn't recognize, kind of freaks out, right? Yeah. And it was the massive inflammatory cytokine storm that killed a lot of people. And it's that massive inflammatory cytokine storm that aggravated so many of the underlying, what they called comorbidities, things that normally wouldn't kill you, but now they did. Yep. Well, that's the inflammatory signal is a necessary signal. In fact, in medicine, they call it a necessary evil. It's a necessary evil for wound healing. There has to be this inflammatory response. Well, in the womb, these doctors that are operating on these fetuses, they're able to measure, and there are no inflammatory cytokines released. Wow. So perfect scarless wound healing is possible. Why is it possible in the womb? Well, because just 8 months earlier, that little baby blossomed from one cell and did all this amazing stuff. There's still an enormous capacity available to a 7, 8, 9 month old fetus. Yeah. And doctors are tapping into this. And
let me say something there, Doug. So I'm thinking from a creationist mindset. And so in the womb, the child has not been subjected to the mass numbers of random mutations they're going to suffer from, like radioactivity and things like that. Radioactivity came after the flood. So as we go on in our lives, we have a quality control system in our body, but it's fighting against the fall of, our fall, the creation's fall. And so there's going to be fewer opportunity for that kind of negative effect in the womb. Now, they've inherited genes, a genetic load from their parents, which is, every generation we get slightly higher genetic load, we slightly deteriorate. But I'm thinking of the deterioration that then occurs in a person's life. So even when we do the regenerative stuff, I would predict that it's not going to be as good as it was in the womb, because there's going to be other things that have broken down in the genetic system where it's not going to do quite as good a job. Is that what you've observed? I know in your line of work you do some of this.
So, and it's the environment that we live in is very harsh. There's radioactivity, there's UV radiation, there's irritants in our environment.
There's Twinkies.
Yeah, there's that, right? Exactly. Oreos. Yeah, exactly. So there's all these other factors, but the promise of immunotherapy is enormous, and I just thank God that I was listening to Real Science Radio, or have been listening the whole time, because it's just always been a wealth of information, and we'll link to the interviews and the articles that we've talked about, and I just wanted to just mention this orthopedic hand surgeon, which, by the way, I've known a couple of hand surgeons, and they're just geniuses. They're no doubt just geniuses, because to to be able to learn and memorize and know how to get around in this and how to fix and repair and to find the blood vessels and the nerves. And anyway, I've had them describe.
Complex.
It's extraordinarily complex, and the guys who do it are I've had a chance to talk to a few of them. They're very impressive. And this fellow, Christopher Allen at University of Washington, has spoken about a phenomenon that he's observed, and he tells the story of an 8-year-old girl who came into his office. She had sliced off the tip of her middle finger right at the top of the cuticle, of her middle finger, and on her brother's bicycle. And he did all he could to try to reattach that fingertip, but he couldn't find the blood vessels. And he said at the end of the day, he just put a biological dressing and stuck the stump back on, and he basically said, go home and hope for the best.
Yeah.
Well, the girl came back in a few weeks with the old fingertip that he tried to reattach. It was in a bag, and there was a new one on her finger that had grown from her finger. And he said that it looked as good as any repair he could have done with a graft or a surgery. And it's something that's been reported, not just with him, but throughout medicine over the past 100 years. And often little children, if they lose the tip of their finger, they tend to grow it back. And it might look a little bit deformed, but it does grow back. And they think it could be related to stem cells in the cuticle. So, you got the cuticle remover that you go and you scrape it all out because you don't like the way it looks. Well,
there are some stem cells there.
There's some stem cells there that might be related to this regeneration. So, and we will continue to follow regenerative medicine and immunotherapy here on Real Science Radio because, of course, it points to the undeniable truth that there is an intelligent creator behind the whole universe. And of course, we hold that is the living God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the Father of Jesus Christ.
That's right. And so, this is a really bad tease, but we do have scientists that are going to be on next year. We're going to talk about regenerative medicine. So you have that to look forward to on future shows. I apologize. It's a really bad tease to be that far out in the future.
Well, tune in after the holidays.
Yeah. But hey, there will be a lot of great shows in between.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, so Doug, I wanted to talk about the world's first wooden satellite.
Oh yeah,
it's been launched into space. So
yeah,
so I think Japan, they launched this, right?
Yes, and when you first read the headline, how do you not click that? Right,
yeah.
Wooden satellite launched into space. Okay, well, I've got to know what's going on here.
How does wood get launched into space on a rocket?
It's just amazing, right? And so what it is the issue of space junk is becoming an issue. There's a finite amount of space that we can put satellites into geosynchronous orbit, and it's a lot of space.
Yeah.
But if you keep filling it up with junk, eventually it's going to get filled up with junk. And then there's the other problem that if you put giant chunks of steel up over the Earth into orbit, well, some of them are eventually going to fall down. They might hit somebody.
And some of it's going to burn up coming through the atmosphere, but a lot of it won't. So
it might not.
Here, we're showing an image right now.
Oh yeah, this is the current coverage of all of the Starlink satellites that have been launched over the past, how long has they been doing? A decade maybe they've been launching these?
Yeah, at least.
Look at that. It's astonishing. And so is it possible that putting this amount of, is it possible it's a bad idea? I don't know. I mean, it's possible that it could get kind of crowded with junk because that picture looks a little crowded already.
It does look crowded. So they got these wooden satellites that when they come crashing back, they should burn up coming through the atmosphere.
That's right.
A piece of timber, you get your marshmallows, and you're good to go.
There you go. Yeah, the University of Kyoto, in an effort to reduce space junk, has launched a wooden satellite that will do whatever it does up there. Maybe you need the satellite to, satellites they're not forever. The orbits eventually decay, and if I'm not mistaken, Fred, everything we put up there into orbit eventually is going to fall back down.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Yeah, and so we need to plan for that in the future. We don't want to be. I don't want to be responsible for, because I wanted high-speed internet, that a chunk of metal falls on somebody's head 75 years from now. I don't want that.
So I didn't. I don't know how this thing exactly got launched into space, but somehow it happened.
Apparently, they put it on the tip of a rocket and they protected it and they shot it out into space. And the anticipation is, when it does fall, inevitably it will reach speeds that will just burn it up.
But what about the rocket that went up there? Is this kind of like that counterintuitive, or that's not even the right word, contradictory, like how it takes as much energy to deal with recycled materials than it is to just
absolutely
throw it out.
I'm sure.
I don't know what the trade-off here is with having a rocket send it off into space, because that rocket has to come back down, right? Unless they disintegrate it, maybe they self-destruct.
Well, I don't know. Elon Musk's rockets, they don't fall down anymore. They fall back down into like a dream catcher thing. That was pretty cool.
Oh,
Did
yeah,
you see
that's
that?
true. I heard about it.
Yeah, the whole idea. And isn't this the perfect picture of how the government does things and how private business does things? For the better part of 75 years, the government burned up, threw away, blew up, everything they launched into space fell back into the ocean. To private business, within 2 or 3 launches, they're like, wait a minute, maybe we should start reusing some of this stuff.
Yeah.
This is really expensive stuff. I must say, I'm not a big fan of Elon Musk because of his some things anyway, but I have to say that was one of the most impressive things I've ever seen, was to see that booster come back down and actually get caught in the arms of... I was actually suspicious that maybe did they AI this? Is this fake? Is this Photoshop? Did that really just happen? I mean, that was pretty amazing.
Did they show it landing on Mars?
No,
the moon, right? Or there's a fake moon somewhere in NASA's studio, their Hollywood studio.
Yeah, was this the same studio? Did Musk lease the same studio where he had the thing grabbed? That was amazing. And what I thought there would be a parachute on it, but there was no parachute. It was literally like firing rockets out the side and guided itself with like a gyroscope, and it just wow. That's pretty cool.
Yep, that is.
And now maybe we'll reduce the space junk now that we're looking into a wooden satellite. At first, it's counterintuitive. It's like, that doesn't sound right. But then you look into it and, hey, maybe that does make sense. And once you get the apparatus, now the apparatus can't be wood. If you're doing transmissions and whatever you're doing, you're going to need a little bit of metal and a little wire. But you can probably make a working structure that you can design to burn up when it falls, so that and then you don't have this giant metal body that might make it through the atmosphere. And hey, Fred, that reminds me, when I was in, let's see, the Mr. Witcher was my science teacher. That would have been 8th grade. Mr. Witcher was his name, unironically. But if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Witcher was the first teacher who told me some version of this headline that I saw this week, that if you put all the monkeys in the world and you give them each a typewriter and give them enough time, eventually they'll type out the complete works of Shakespeare.
Yeah.
My science teacher told me that in 8th grade.
Stephen Hawking used that as an argument, and a guy where I work at Micron mentioned this one. And so, normally where I work, you don't really dive into politics that much, because this is kind of politics, honestly, because it's fake science, and it's politics, it's religion.
Yeah.
It's so religion.
Well, but yeah, and here's the thing about...
He brought that up, and I'm like, okay, this is one religious conversation I'm going to get into, because I had already done the math, and this is maybe a decade ago when this happened. He's a really nice guy, but I came up to him like, dude, here's the math. And the math never supported this. It was something like if you had you took all the molecules in the universe, not the monkeys on,
every molecule,
turn them all into a typing monkey and let them try to type one of Shakespeare's sonnets over trillions of universes and trillions of years. They would only produce the first 100 characters of one of Shakespeare's sonnets. So it's mathematically impossible. So I got a kick out of this headline, too, because it says, monkeys will never type Shakespeare, study finds. This is October 31st. I could have told you guys it was simple. It's really not that. It's fairly elementary math to do this calculation.
Of course.
I could have told them, hey, I'm an engineer. I'm not I don't have a PhD in mathematics, but you can use basic algebra to prove that whole thing's wrong and it's nonsense.
Yeah.
Because there's 10 to the 80th power molecules in the universe. The odds of them typing Shakespeare's sonnet, just the first 100 characters, is far greater than the number of molecules in the universe. It's ridiculous.
And then
it's never mathematically.
And then doesn't that increase by an order of magnitude if those characters were to be in order and actually be letters that made sense?
Well, yeah, that's where just to get the first 100, it was
right.
Let alone a whole sonnet of thousands of words.
Right, and the way it was pitched in 8th grade was they would eventually type the entire body of work, all of it.
Yeah,
Henry V did the whole thing, everything he ever wrote, and that's you mentioned religion. So and by the way, in my high school, evolutionary biology started in 7th grade. We didn't get to algebra until 9th grade. So before we knew better, our teachers were telling us that these monkeys could do it, and we're just little kids. We don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
You're a teacher. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, one of my science teachers had a degree.
I'm a teacher.
Uh-huh.
I am.
You are?
Okay. I didn't know that, but that's okay.
What do you mean? What did I say?
You said I'm a teacher.
Oh, what I meant to say was one of my teachers.
Okay. You're a teacher. I am?
No, one of my teachers, I believe, had a degree. Now,
should I start an internet channel, Professor Fred?
There you go. I like it. That's a great idea, Fred. Yeah, hey, you could start with this.
Yeah.
This would be earth-shattering for a lot of people who graduated from government schools and then went out to college. They probably still believe this in some form.
Oh, yeah. Just the very fact that guy at work mentioned it.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of people buy into this whole infinite monkey theorem.
Uh-huh.
Because they worship Stephen Hawking, who is a knucklehead and not as smart as people think.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
Well, I did not worship Mr. Witcher. I doubted him. And the only class I was ever allowed to get a C in was biology, either 7th or 8th grade. My dad was like, that's okay. You're going to get that because you won't go along with this part of their evolution, and he said that's okay. So
you'll get your automatic A in geology.
Those are always automatic. All right. So anyway, Fred, you did the math on a Texas Instruments calculator 10 years ago, but now the Australian mathematicians with degrees in mathematics, they've actually done it, and shockingly, they've come to the same conclusion you did. And the same conclusion anyone who was paying attention by the time you got into algebra, had you been paying attention, any one of us could have figured this out. So they said there's a 5% chance. Here's what they allege. And I don't believe this. I don't buy this. They say in their study, they said there's a 5% chance that a single chimp would successfully type the word bananas in its own lifetime. And probably one chimp constructing a random sentence such as "I chimp, therefore I am," comes in at 1 in 10 million billion, which that's absurd to think that could happen.
And I remember part of the calculation that I had, it included like typing at like 100 words a minute or something really fast. I think the average, I can't remember, but the average is like, for someone who's basic in typewriting, maybe 30 words a minute. I'm trying to remember. I don't remember, but it was a lot.
Well, I think to get a job, you had to hit 60.
Yeah.
So, and that's
exactly.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate because I had played the piano. So in typing class, they had this chart of, the different students and how they were doing, how many words. I was like at 75 or something. Everybody else is like 20, 10, 15. 30, couple.
Yeah. I think I'm about 30 on a good day.
Yeah. I'm not anymore, man. As you get older, I end up typing like letters back to back. Anyways, so there's a quote here. It says, "It is not plausible that even with improved typing speeds or an increase in chimpanzee populations, monkey labor will ever be a viable tool for developing non-trivial written works," the study says. I mean, how this even makes it into the press. I mean, this is nonsense that's been refuted, but at least it's something there for people who've been using this stupid argument.
Yes. Well, the BBC actually reported it in the mainstream media, reported on what I truly believe this is one of the biggest lies ever foisted upon the minds of children throughout all of Western civilization, probably for the better part of 100 years. This little lie that every kid has heard this, and it's despicable, and it's maybe criminal that you're allowed to get away with telling little kids lies like this in schools. Another reason to get or keep your children out of the government schools, if they go to the government schools, they're going to hear that. And you don't need them hearing that, although if they do hear it, just, be prepared to refute it.
Yep.
It's not that
so,
big.
Doug, before we get to the next one, it's time for the interesting fact of the week.
Oh, that's right. Interesting fact of the week. Fred, I am ready. Lay it on me.
Okay. What gives onions their distinctive smell? Just be glad I'm not eating onions this afternoon.
What gives onions? I would assume, I'm not sure. It's, is it an oil?
It's a mineral.
A
Mineral.
Oh, I have to come up with the actual name of the mineral?
Yeah.
Well, the monkeys will type Shakespeare before I figure that out.
Here, I'll give you a clue. It's kind of a smelly mineral.
A smelly mineral. A smelly mineral. See, it was right on the tip of my tongue there for a second, and then it vanished off into outer space. A smelly mineral. Yeah, I'm drawing a blank on smelly minerals.
Okay.
Then I'm gonna get buzzed, aren't I?
You probably are. Just guess any mineral.
I can't even think of a mineral. Zinc.
Okay, I'll give
Calcium.
you. Begins with an S.
Selenium.
The correct answer is sulfur.
Sulfur. That's the one that was on the tip of my tongue.
I'll give you a cheer for that. I believe you.
It doesn't count if it doesn't make it off the tip of your tongue. It's like, just because the monkey typed A, we can't give him credit for apple. No B, you don't get banana. Yep. Well, Fred, we're almost out of time. I want to close with an article that was sent to us from our creationist curmudgeon friend, John. He sent us an article from the Smithsonian magazine talking about early Mesopotamian cylinder seals. So apparently the rich and the famous and the kings, back when they wanted to put their impression or put their official stamp on something, they have these cylinder seals that had various images and whatnot on them, that either they would dip them in ink and roll them, or they would roll them in the clay to make their impression, right? And the article that appeared in the Smithsonian magazine,
not a creationist magazine. That's not creationist magazine.
Smithsonian, no, no, not only by accident, once in a while, and I think that's what we have here. The cylinder seal they happen to picture in the article happens to be a cylinder seal that pictures a human being. Depending on how you want to interpret the scene, a human being perhaps defending himself against what looks like a dinosaur.
Dinosaur.
Yeah.
So
right.
Humans and dinosaurs.
Yes.
You know, we've had proof or evidence of humans and dinosaurs for a long time, long before we had soft tissue, that pretty much made it, a slam dunk. Dinosaurs and human are contemporaneous. They live together.
Sure.
Soft tissue proves that. They're not that old. I mean, they're old. They're thousands of years old.
Yeah.
Well, that's old, but not, it's not millions of years old. No. So that's pretty cool. And we're showing an image of this if you're able to watch us on YouTube. And by the way, please subscribe and like the video.
That's
Leave
right.
comments. It helps this video spread.
Make comments, even nasty, mean comments.
And we'll try to respond when we can.
We don't mind.
Yeah,
we're pretty tough.
So thanks to John for sending this in. That's really
just
cool.
Amazing. Just another magazine in this case.
It reminds me of when my wife and I went to the museum in Shanghai, and they had pictures of dinosaurs on bedposts and whatnot. And so who's going to put a mythological creature on your bedpost? That'd be like putting Buzz Lightyear. You're an adult, and you've got a Buzz Lightyear on your bedpost. What would your friends think of you?
Yeah, that's kind of weird.
Spider-Man for an adult? I mean, these were adult bed frames and other types of furniture. So this just reminds me of, it's just another example where it's pretty obvious that humans did live with dinosaurs. In fact, the old encyclopedias say that dinosaurs are still in existence, but rare. They just eventually got killed out and went extinct. So,
and Smithsonian pictures the image of the dinosaur, but makes no mention of the fact that what you're looking at with your own eyes. But that's why we appreciate John pointing it out, because the editors at Smithsonian did not. They ignored what was in the picture, which is a little annoying.
That is. It's interesting that they just didn't quite put that together.
Yeah. It's almost like they weren't paying attention to their own pictures that they were putting in their article, which, I don't know, maybe that's what a journalism degree gets you anymore. Yeah. Well, we noticed, and John, the creationist curmudgeon, he noticed. And just happy to bring it to you here at Real Science Radio. We might be out of time, Fred. Are we out yet? Or
I believe we're pretty much out of time, Doug. So, I wish you a Merry Christmas. We got the
Merry Christmas to you, absolutely, and I'll look forward to getting together with you in the studio at my earliest convenience at all possible.
It's always great to have you in the studio, for sure.
Amen. Thanks, Fred.
And again, we've got a lot of great shows planned for next year. We've got some special guests that people will be surprised that they're coming on our show, maybe to some extent. So.
Yeah.
And please, if you can, go to rsr.org/store. And if you don't want to, we've got great materials there, but if you just want to support the show, just hit the donate button. It helps us with producing videos. It actually helps us, in some cases, reach out to speakers. We're trying to up our game here in a lot of different ways. So that's one way that you can help. If you enjoy the show, please help us out. We don't, we don't make, ad revenue or anything like that. So,
well, we're not hitting the big ad revenue from YouTube. Not quite yet.
Yeah. But we are growing thanks to you, and we appreciate all your comments and all the stuff you mail us in. And, for example, John the curmudgeon.
Yeah, the creationist curmudgeon. We need more of you out there, If you can help, anyway, we appreciate it, folks. God bless.
God bless. So for Doug McBurney, I'm Fred Williams of Real Science Radio. May God bless you.